Excuse me, Mayor. Just a heads up, we are not on Zoom because the internet's down, so we're just recording.
Okay. Is the recording live now?
Yes, sir.
We'll now call the council meeting to order for April the 25th. Please rise to the invocation and pledge of allegiance. Invocation by Deputy Mayor Bernard.
Let's pray. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for your love. Thank you for being with us tonight. We ask you to lead us in this meeting and to guide us in a direction that it would be your will, dear Lord. Please thank all those that got here safely today, and please be with those that could not come to keep them safe in this community, as well as our children who just got off of their spring break, I believe. And pray for the protection of all of our military people overseas. And dear Lord, we just ask that you be with us all tonight. We do this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember McGuire?
Here.
Councilmember McCure?
Here.
Councilmember Taylor?
Here.
Deputy Mayor Bernard?
Here.
Mayor Anderson?
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Up first, under citizens and outside agencies, we have the museum additions. This will be Ronald 70. I see him here. Ron, if you will, please give your name and address for the record and tell us about what you want to build.
Mr. Mayor and honorable members of the City Council, I am Ron 70, Alpha Springs, Florida.
Yes, sir.
The purpose of my presentation today is to share a dream with you. Several weeks ago, a large group of citizens met at the Depot Museum, and we threw up on a flag a dream or an idea. The idea was to build a baseball museum in Avon Park. So I'm here today to share that dream with you and to tell you about what we're doing.
Okay.
We're thinking about a baseball museum. And not just a baseball museum, but the Thomas Flash Gordon Baseball Museum. The thinking being that Thomas is such a well-known baseball personality and star. 21 years of Major League Baseball, great pitcher. He's got over 100 wins, over 100 saves, over 100 holes. He's the only player in Major League Baseball that has that record. No one else exceeds that record. He's been in the All-Star game. He's a nominee for the Hall of Fame. Just a well-known individual in baseball. Someone who could attract people to Avon Park. So the idea of putting his name on the museum is to make our museum attractive to people from out of the community, to bring them into our community. And Tom has a tremendous, very interesting story of his life. He was born and brought up here, went through high school here, broke a national record in strikeout record when he was in high school here. And his two sons are presently in Major League Baseball. You know, Deeds with Washington and Nick is with Minnesota. So he's got a big history. So we would capitalize on his fame. We looked at small town baseball museums. One example we looked at was Royston, Georgia. You may not know Royston, Georgia. It's a very small town, less than 2,000 population, smaller than Frostbrook. They have a museum called the Ty Cobb Museum. It brings people from all over to that community to see that museum. And if you go to TripAdvisor or Yelp and you look at the reviews on that museum, people just think it's fabulous. Every review is just over the top, like what a great museum. And it's a small, one-room museum, but it's very well done. Same thing with the museum in Fargo, North Dakota, the Roger Maris Museum. There's a Clementi Museum in Pennsylvania. These small museums in a small town can really attract people from out of town. One of the big things in our thinking is because we want to attract people to town, the signage is going to be very, very important. Yeah, so is there another sign, is that, okay. So we looked at the baseball museum in Ybor City, okay? And they really have a flashy sign. Signage, I think, is really important, okay? So we're not saying this would be the sign, we're saying, you know, just an idea that we want something really striking. And actually, so people come down 27 and they see that sign north and south on Main Street, a very, very visible sign, something that really attracts people. We want to bring people downtown, okay? Something good for the downtown, okay? Of course, the other advantage is inspiring to our youth, something that people in the community can be very proud of, bring our community together, okay? And when they get to the museum, we want it to be a really quality experience, okay? And we have some quality baseball stuff going on because Tom McRae, born and brought up here in town, one of the best hitters and managers in Major League Baseball, okay? Babe Ruth, Lou Gehrig playing here. The St. Louis Cardinals doing spring training here. Absolutely amazing high school baseball, 8 state championships. No small town, no town our size has that kind of record. We've got a lot of stories that we could tell in that museum. It could be just a very, a great experience for anybody coming into our town. So, the fact is, as you all know, we're talking about city property. We're talking about expanding the present museum. So we have the Depot Museum, and we're talking about bringing the museum out towards Main Street. Now, Suzanne and Keith Honeycutt have spent hours on this project. We're just trying to get dreaming of how we could build this building and what it would look like, okay? So they've gone through one thing after another. I've got a plan that I can show you. It's actually completely changed. We had a meeting today. Our committee, we call it, with the pitchers and hitters. We've got a 21-person committee that's working on this project. We had actually a meeting at 1 o'clock today. And I can show you just basically, we would extend, I don't know, somebody would pull that up. So I can show it. Okay.
Tom, I'll help you.
So, you know, the present museum is here, okay? So we would just be adding on to this part of the museum,
Right.
okay? We'd be actually adding on around 1,600 square feet, okay? So, and it's actually, we've actually changed this 3 or 4 times. So they're working on the present. We had a little issue with survey, so that's why I don't have a really up-to-date blueprint. But again, the present museum is here. We're gonna have we'd have a large exhibit area. We're required to have handicapped restrooms, big expense. We were gonna have to have 2 of them, but then we decided today that we're probably gonna redo the bathroom in the present museum and make it handicapped. So that'll save us some money. And then they need storage area. There's just no storage for the museum, so there has to be an area for storage. And then we want to have an event area, okay? So that's, again, we're in dreamland here. We're very preliminary, you know, everything is wide open, okay? And that's some of the things we're thinking about, okay? So that kind of gives you an idea. Again, it's on city property. It would be a city asset. We want to comply with everything, all code, all zoning, all sewer, everything that the city requires. Thanks to Deputy Mayor Jim, and the cooperation with the city has been absolutely unbelievable. I mean, the city manager, Christian's been just, I worked her to death. Randy back there and code, you know, these guys have been just fantastic to work with. I go in there and, what do you need, what do you want, you know, and they just have been very, very helpful. Because I'm a total idiot with code and all this other stuff, and they just, you know, and this kind of stuff. I don't know anything about this kind of stuff. So they've been great, okay? And I just thank you so much for that. Okay. So I want it to be so that if someone, you know, whenever Judy and I are traveling, we do a lot of traveling, we just, when we go to the city, the first thing I do is go to TripAdvisor, and I put in TripAdvisor, and it says what to do. The number one thing to do in this city. So I want this, if you pop in Avon Park, the number one thing to do is to see the Thomas Flash Gordon Baseball Museum. They put in Highlands County. I want them to see the Girls in Lake Placid, the Avon Park, the Thomas Flash Gordon Avon Park Museum. Okay, I want that to be a destination, okay? We've talked to the Tourism Development Council, they're all in. We're meeting with the county tomorrow to speak to, they got all these names, I'll pack them. Dirty meeting with them tomorrow morning. So,
Dr. Ron, this is all gonna be privately funded, is that correct?
well, let me tell you about that. We had a long meeting today about that. Initially, we thought we could do this for a certain amount of money. And the reality is today, as we look at the numbers, we're looking at, because of the cost of materials and everything right now, it's just this is probably the worst possible time to do a project like this. Okay? And I don't know about the timing, whether this is the time to do it, or whether it needs to be delayed 6 months or a year, or whatever, just to see what costs would happen. Because what they're telling us today is that your 1,600 square feet is gonna be $400,000. Okay? That's way over what we.
I think you can do a little better than that.
Pardon?
I think you can do a little better than that.
So, you know, the cost is gonna be extremely high, so we can't shut off any options, okay? We've got commitments with some private money, we're gonna have to look at grants, we're gonna have to look at every area of where we can get money. I have no idea, at this point in time, we're so early in the project that, I could see us asking for CRA money. I'm not saying we will, I don't even know, okay? So.
Just out of curiosity, how much private funds did you guys raise?
Well,
I'm sure you originally had a budget.
right, to be honest with you, I can't tell you that because the people that have committed money don't know what their names are for yet.
Yeah, I'm not asking you who, I'm just
Yeah.
curious if you had a budget in mind.
I think we could have done a project for $250, we wouldn't have asked for much government money. I hate to say that, because, this is something we're gonna have to work through, so it's gonna take a while to do this out.
Okay, so what you're actually requesting from the city, obviously you're probably looking for a general mood of the council, but being that it's gonna be on city property, ultimately, I'm sure the council would have to approve that. Being that you don't have a finalized plan at this point, you're not really asking for that yet. Just kind of a preliminary thing to see if the council is in favor of it.
Right, I'm just trying to give you guys a heads up.
Sure.
I told the committee members, don't come to, you know, we're not trying to get you guys to vote on anything.
Sure.
Don't think people get affected. But what I would like to see is November 2023, to have a ribbon cutting. And when they had the hospital foundation golf tournament in November, Tom was got so many close friends in Major League Baseball. And just a few of the people that were there, Bo Jackson, Mariana Rivera, Fred McGriff, Barry Sheffield, Louis Tion, Wolfgang Boyd, Jim Rice, Jeremy Trueblood, and there were, I think, 6 or 7 others, okay, just came to that golf tournament. So on the ribbon cutting in November 2023, I could see these guys. Can you imagine having a ribbon cutting with these kind of guys there? What it would be?
That'd be amazing.
Think of that, absolutely amazing.
Well, Ron, I really like to thank you for even coming up with the idea and spending the time that you have so far. I don't think you're gonna hear anybody up here that's gonna be opposed to this sort of thing.
Right, again, I appreciate the city, your city people working so well with us, and, again, I think it would be an investment to pay dividends for the city for years and years.
Sure.
It's something, a great city asset. So thank you so much for listening.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Ron, can I ask you a question? Have you drawn up the plans already? Have you drawn up the plans already?
Well, we have blueprints, right?
Blueprints of?
This has been like the third, but this is antiquated as of right now.
So I just wondered, are you building onto the the Depot Museum?
Yes, we're adding
Okay.
on to extending the museum.
Well, will that take away from the historical value of the museum?
No, because it'll be exactly the same design and stucco.
Same aesthetic.
Yeah, Suzanne Honeycutt indicated we want everything to be, so it all flows, okay? You may end up having to end up painting the old museum, it's gonna look old compared to, but it's gonna all flow in the same basic design.
When you say Honeycutt, you're referring to the architecture firm?
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank
Thank you very much. Any questions or comments on that?
I like baseball, so I'd like to see it happen.
Like I said, I don't think anyone's going to be opposed to that. Obviously, if it comes down to having to put in a bunch of city money, then that's probably going to be a separate issue. But the general overview looks good to me. Obviously, we should be doing everything that we can to bring traffic downtown. Mr. 70 and his group of people have done a great job so far, and it sounds to me like they've got their heads in the right place and trying to bring as many people downtown as possible. I think it's a good thing. If there's no further questions or comments on that, we will move on.
I got some questions, Mr. 70. I just want to make sure I got a clear understanding. It's going to be named the Thomas Flash Gordon Baseball Museum? And then where would
Ron, if you could get over to that microphone there.
and then where would Hal McRae fit in? What, he would be in the museum, but his name won't be anywhere. This would definitely be named the Thomas Flash Gordon. Okay, and then all the baseball players that came out of Avon Park, they would be included into this museum, even high school and little league and all.
Absolutely. That's, the great history of all the players. Because there were like, I think, 11 players that came through high school that went to Major League Baseball in Avon Park. Yeah, we want to incorporate everything. Now, Hal McRae, his health isn't the best right now, and you can't put a name on a museum. It's got a whole bunch of names, so we probably get the superstar up there, and then as soon as they get in there, the next superstar is Hal McRae. Fantastic guy. And,
So he would have his own area in the museum.
all right.
And what about what about Thomas Sons? They would have their area set up in the museum as well.
That's all going to be a great part of the museum.
Okay.
All that big family history. Right.
Okay.
Absolutely.
And hopefully we'll be adding a lot more names to it. Okay? All right, moving on to the consent agenda. We have the minutes from April 11th, 2022. If you're looking for a motion.
I'll make a motion.
We have a motion to approve. Is there a second? Second. We have a motion and a second. Is there any questions or changes to the minutes? Hearing none.
Councilmember McGuire?
Yes.
Councilmember McCure?
Yes.
Councilmember Taylor?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Bernard?
Yes.
Mayor Anderson?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Item number 6, we had City Council and Planning and Zoning Board members discussion. If you'll remember last meeting, brought up the zoning board of looking for kind of a general overview, since we have so many new council members, of what our vision for the city is going forward. If there is any changes to what we currently have, kind of getting a general feel from the council, to how we want to be. Obviously, it would be my intention that we are going to be very friendly towards business. I think that we need to be very aggressive in trying to attract business and development in Avon Park. You really can't stay the same. It's a lot like being a Christian. You're either dying or you're growing. You're never going to just be able to sit still. So I think that Avon Park should definitely be in favor of growing instead of shrinking, so that our youth will be able to grow up and actually have jobs, start businesses here. So I look forward to hearing from the council if we have anything they'd like to lead off with.
I, for one, I think I've said this in the past, when I first moved here, the first thing I noticed, I thought that everybody told me they didn't really want Avon Park to grow, and I didn't quite understand that, because we're a small town, a small community of, I think we're a great community of people that mix well together. And so I always was in favor of growth, and I think we're just in the beginning stage of really seeing some growth in the city right now. And I want to thank the members of the Planning and Zoning Board for being here tonight. I know that a lot of you spent a lot of years on there, and I appreciate your service. And I think we made the agreement to vote last time to keep everybody as is, as well as we added an alternate. But at the same time, I think that maybe at the end of the next people's terms, there maybe it may be time to grow into some new people, get some other people's, younger people's opinion, to see exactly what they think, because there's a lot of things today that I don't know anything about electronically. I couldn't tell you. I'm barely can use my cell phone. I need kids to help me download stuff. But, so I wouldn't mind seeing some new faces and new ideas, maybe the next go around. But I think that so far, I think we're just in the beginning stage of starting to grow. We're seeing things with the Purple Building, the airport. We got another major item on here tonight. So I'm definitely for future growth of there. We grow the businesses, we'll grow the residents, and vice versa. And that'll bring, revenue and taxes and water and sewer to the city, so we'll grow financially as well. So I'm definitely in favor of growing, and I wouldn't mind seeing some new faces next time around.
Okay, anyone else?
I agree. We need to get the growth started on Main Street.
Okay.
I believe that'll bring in a lot of new people into the area.
Okay. Any other comments?
Yeah. Any of the members want to talk?
Yeah, it's open to anyone wishing to speak. Okay. So in specific, the areas of growth, I think that, industrial, more heavy business is probably going to be is going to be the path to the highest paying jobs. One of the, I'm not going to say downfall, but one of the things about our community is that we do have a lot of agriculture, and agriculture tends to work out very well, for the landowner or maybe the small group of people who are at the top of the company. But the workers, by and large, don't really make a whole lot of money. Whereas in industrial, manufacturing, high-end commercial, you tend to get a lot more high-paying jobs. There's a lot more density there. I'm sure our planning and zoning expert would agree with that. And that's something that we need to expand as much as possible. There's been a few missteps, in my opinion, in Naval Park history. There was a large portion of industrial land that was out on Lake Avenue that was unfortunately built out in apartments rather than in industrial. I think that did a lot to hurt the industrial sector of Avon Park. We are limited on space, but I think that we should get with our planning and zoning, Central Florida Regional Planning, to see if we can expand our industrial zone. We are annexing more and more properties. We do know that we have kind of a clear path all the way out to Newport at this point, so we do have the ability to maybe follow that railroad track all the way out there with all industrial, put that in our future land uses. When it comes to commercial, Highway 27 tends to be our main corridor. I think that we could probably expand that a little bit, perhaps on Memorial, towards the Parkway area, definitely out towards the airport. I'm hoping that the new manager out there at the airport will do as much as they can to increase the industrial property out there. I know some of the landowners, Cruiser Cruz and Saxon family and people like that, have kicked around the idea of making that industrial parks. I think that we should definitely reach out to those people and be aggressive about trying to plan that out for the future and go ahead and lock that in for more industrial applications and try to get the sites already prepped for businesses. So one of the things by sitting on some of the boards that I have with the county is you see the importance of having sites that are shovel ready. They're already zoned properly. They already have the water connections, sewer connections that are available. Everything's ready to be built out. We don't have to worry about the sand skinks and you name it. Everything's already been done. So when a business does want to come in, all they have to do is write the check, put the shovels on the ground, and build the infrastructure. So I'm really not in favor of restricting anything. I would definitely be more for opening things up or identifying areas. I would be looking for the council's opinions on anything that they would like to restrict or open up. Is anything there?
Yes. I would like to have the council to entertain, if I'm right, I'm pretty much speaking to the zoning, Cornell and back, about opening up, when I say back, north of Avon Park. Can anyone open up a business south of Cornell? And how far?
I don't think there's a restriction on that.
Sure. So we'll have to get the microphone there, but if we had a planning and zoning map, obviously that would tell us exactly what can and can't be done. But I believe you're talking about on the south side of town, correct?
That is correct.
Yeah, so pretty much all of the main roads have commercial already. That could certainly be expanded. There actually is quite a bit of industrial that's underutilized on the south side for sure. So if you're talking about the,
You mean near the great mill?
well, yeah, that's certainly part of it, but that's kind of on the outskirts, it's over towards the power plant there. But I'm talking about right in the center. If you're driving down, Lake Avenue, there's several four-ways down on the south side that are all business friendly. There's houses that have been built in a lot of that, but they could have just as easily been commercial. And that's another point to that is that, even on Main Street, we do have quite a bit of, R1A, and we do have quite a bit of housing that's actually sitting in C4 that could be commercial. And we need to try to incentivize those people as much as possible to, maybe tear down an old house, or maybe, instead of building a home, go ahead and build a business there, preferably something that's multi-story. That way we get more density downtown. The fact of the matter is we need more people downtown. And whether we're bringing people downtown because of an event or because they live there, you need to get people downtown. That's the only way we're ever going to have a thriving downtown. And the same thing for the south side. You could do, there is some multi-story buildings there, but very few and far between. And they need to build more.
Yes, I like to see more.
Okay, so perhaps we could, we don't have our maps as part of our packet, but perhaps at a future meeting, maybe not next meeting, but the meeting after, we could send all the council members a zoning map, a LDR map, and we could all be thinking about that and looking at areas that we could expand or highlight and discuss that at a future meeting. Tom, you know the drill.
609, Tom Macklin, 609 County Road 64 East, Stayer here in Avon Park.
Yes, sir.
As part of that package, and probably something that maybe some of the council members, particularly the newer ones, may not be aware of, but certainly the former mayor and deputy mayor, Barr, as well as myself, is we as a council spent a lot of time going over enterprise zones and establishing them based on LDRs and zoning and opportunities for businesses. And I would hope that a part of that conversation and those packets would be laying out exactly where the enterprise zones are within the municipal boundaries of Avon Park, because that also provides a lot of incentives for people who not just want to build businesses, but employ people from the city because they get benefits through the enterprise zone processes. So I would hope that that would be a part of the conversation, because there's a lot of advantages to embracing that as well.
Sure. Yeah, it's an interesting point. I don't think that the enterprise zones have been highlighted to the council in quite some time. I don't know that I've ever actually seen them.
Right.
So by all means, we should get a hold of those. The county has been very proactive in putting out enterprise zones. I know that out there by Nucor, along that new pipeline that we ran out there, pretty much all of that has been deemed an enterprise zone at some point. We need to obviously piggyback on that and be clear about what is being promoted out there. Anything else?
I'd like to address the planning and zoning department. We had discussed our last meeting about, before we brought Ms. Blake on, we had, played around with, when you have been on the board for so many years, replacing you, if there's someone, if I'm right, on the alternate list, we had played around with that. And I think what we was trying to say was that, like they just said, we're trying to bring new, fresh ideas to the committee. Young folks can bring something to the table. So how do you guys feel about that? For some of you that's been sitting on the committee for years, I'm 10, 15 years, whatever, and you probably have been because there's no one who's been interested. And when someone become interested, they've been sitting there like Ms. Blake did. What do you think about if the council decided that we want to replace somebody that's been sitting on there for 10, 15 years to bring in
You're
new,
talking
fresh
about
ideas?
me. I've been on the zoning board for many years.
No, ma'am, no,
Yeah,
ma'am.
so
Okay.
Just for the record, this is Gene Jordan.
Not personally, Miss Jordan.
Well,
not
then you
personally.
are, because I'm the oldest, I've been on it for years. But let me tell you, there's been a few times I tried to get off, and Jennifer has asked me to stay on, because sometimes they don't know things that happened in the past,
Yes, ma'am.
but I'm able to tell them.
Okay.
So that's why I'm still here after all these years. Yes, young people might be able to do a few things with electronics, but a few people that's younger don't have the memory I have of what has happened in this city and the zoning that took place ahead of time that's grandfathered in. So yes, if you want me off, I'll be glad to step down, but that's up to you,
No,
not me.
ma'am. No, ma'am. That's not what we're saying. It may not be you. It may be someone that has less years than you. We're saying that, young people come to the table with more than just technology, okay? If you sit down and listen to them, I always say, you'll learn some things or two, believe it or not, if you get to take the time to listen to them. And guess what I'm saying is, we wouldn't want to get rid of all of our experience. We can't do that. But if you take a young member and mix them in there with the ones that's been there for a while and let you guys hear some of their ideals to help the city grow, that's what I was talking about. It ain't not necessarily has to be you. It could be someone that has less years than you. But I just want to know, I heard what you thought. Now, it would be nice to hear how anybody else feel about it. I mean,
Anyone else wishing to speak to that question?
I've been on the board for a few years now, and I can tell you, I would invite you to come to a meeting and see what we do. Most of our packets are prepared for us just like yours are, and our information is brought to us by Central Florida Regional Planning.
Okay.
And in those packets, there are recommendations on what we could do or could not do,
Okay.
and there are discussions on those. But I would invite you to come to a meeting.
So you're saying that to say
And
what? A
see.
young person couldn't handle?
Oh, a young person could definitely handle it.
Mhm.
We did have a young person that was appointed to the board, and I think he only came to
there's
2 or
been-
3 meetings.
There's been several. over
And
the
we
years.
haven't seen him since.
They get bored, they don't think much of it, and they leave. We
I
have
guess what I'm
a few
saying,
of
you
them.
guys, is what happened if we do get a young person that's been sitting on the alternate list? What do we do with them? We keep adding members? Because it sounds like nobody wants to move.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, as far as the positions go, the positions are entirely up to the council. So if you're just asking individual members of how they feel about being replaced, that's one thing, but, the
Yeah,
council
that's what
does
I'm
set
asking. I'm
who's
asking,
on, who's off, and how many members we have.
Well, you could make a bigger board. I mean, if you want a
Sure.
9 or a 12-member board, that's fine, but making sure you
Yeah.
get enough of them there for a quorum is the issue.
Yeah. I guess I have a little bit different take. I don't think that age is a help or hindrance, really. I think that qualifications go a lot further and general attitude. So I would be more interested in hearing what the outlook from the board is on, business growth and things like that. I think that having a board that is very aggressive and is very, interested in seeing the growth of Avon Park would probably be more of an asset than however many years or how young you are or older or whatever. So, Chris, on that same line, how do you see future business and the growth of Avon Park? Is that something that you're very much for, that you would see yourself actively campaigning for, or what?
Well, absolutely. I mean, we just did, what did we do last year? We did food trucks. We worked on the regulations for food trucks. We haven't heard anything back as far as to where did anything go with that?
Right.
Did it go any further?
We had a lot of interested parties, and so far
Right.
as I've seen,
Right.
not a lot of actual.
Nothing happened. We
Right.
worked on it for, many meetings, didn't we?
Sure. Okay.
I definitely don't have a problem with the city growing. It needs to grow.
Okay.
But we can only do what's brought before us
We can't make it
As a-
grow
as a-
without it being brought to us.
as a
Well,
board.
Yes and no. I mean, so that's kind of the point of having people that are, I think one of the qualifications is you should be actively in business, in development, in construction, engineering, you name it, real estate. That way that's what you do for a living. That's your day job, is going around and business development, because you're going to have people that associated with that you happen to see at a lunch meeting or whatever, that are gonna ask you, hey, I heard you were on the, you were on the zoning board, what's going on in Avon Park? And that leads to somebody being interested in a piece of property that then leads to a business, that so on and so forth. We need people who are actively out there and, are doing, moving and shaking, in my opinion.
So Mayor, you're saying that everybody that's on the zoning planning committee, they came to the table with experience, or as being on the board for years, they got the
I mean, I don't know the background of every single person.
Right,
I mean,
that's
I
my
know
point
some, I know
exactly.
some of them certainly are. I mean, I know Sharon. I know her personally. I know that she was the mayor. I know she knows everything there is to know about Avon Park zoning. She was here for a very long time. I know that, but I don't know every single person personally. I'm just
I was in
simply
real
saying
estate for
that.
over 40 years, you know that, don't you?
Say
I'm
again.
sorry?
I was in real estate, I owned my own business for over 40 years.
I understand that, but in the past you haven't necessarily been the most open to development in Avon Park. You've had an opinion that was not very, I guess, conducive to growth.
No, you have never seen me not open to vote.
Well,
The
gee,
only thing I've asked for is instead of 50-foot lots in some of these R1A zoning, that the lots would be larger, because you want people to come in and build estates homes on large lots also, along with all the others.
Right. Well,
Now,
there's been 100 different issues that have come up, and you and I just don't see eye to eye on a lot of things. And whether you agree with my assumption of your career on the zoning board or not, it doesn't really matter.
well, I know you're the mayor, and nobody's gonna see eye to eye with you on a lot of things. That's just the
That's
way
not
it
necessarily
is.
true. I agree with a lot. But
Well, I feel like one of the most important things, because I have been coming to the planning and zoning meetings since being on the council. I've been to planning and zoning meetings myself with requests, in the years past. And I think the biggest thing, and this was the problem in Avon Park for a long time, is there was a, almost like, so it felt like somebody would come in with a really good idea, and the general consensus and the general feeling when they would go into different areas to find out about zoning and different things would squash it. And so it's almost intimidating for some of these individuals to come in to some of these meetings. Because I've been on both sides of it, so I guess, like I've said, I've petitioned planning and zoning things, and then I've also been to the meetings, watching you guys, and I appreciate all of you guys, everything that you do, and I know it's hard to make the decisions because you don't know sometimes the right decision versus the wrong decision and what the future is going to be for that. But I would just like to see, and I'm not saying that you're not this way, but I would like to see a lot of encouragement when these individuals come in. When I sit down at the meeting, sometimes there's 2 people sitting out there. And it would be so wonderful if we came to a planning and zoning meeting and the room was full, because this one had an idea, this one had an idea, this one had an idea. And we could see Avon Park, just explode with the growth. But sometimes coming to the meetings, and even coming before us as a council, it feels very intimidating and very stunting, I guess you could say. And I feel like, those of us who are on here now, and I feel like the city staff, I think we're really, really, really trying to cut through some of those walls and things and the barriers that have been built up over the years, because I feel like that's kind of the direction that our city was headed, was just kind of stunting it. And so I think we all would just like, to make sure that you guys are all in that with us. We want Avon Park to prosper, we want it to grow, we want people to be excited, because it feels like sometimes you're beating a dead horse to get somebody to come into Avon Park or to come to downtown. And we want the excitement back, and that's not crazy activities. I'm talking about the excitement for life. When individuals raise their families here, you want your kids to say, Mom or Dad, I may go off to college, but I'm coming back. Because I'm going to start a business in Avon Park. I'm going to work in Avon Park. Miss Brenda must not want the kids to come back. I want my 4 kids to come back. I want them to live in Avon Park. We've lived here for generations, and I'm proud to live in Avon Park. I want my kids to be proud to live in Avon Park. So I think that's the general consensus: is we want excitement, we want life.
Yes, they want me on.
No, ma'am, we don't want you off the board. You already said you come to the table with a lot of experience. But as I look at the planning and zoning committee, and then as I look at the council, the age difference.
Yeah, I
We
look
got
at
a mixture up here.
Yeah.
We getting old. I know he's getting tired of me. We're getting old, and I just think that we should start mixing some young folks among them.
If you
That when you do start to, retire or whatever, you have trained them. You have trained them along the way. And now they can take the baton.
Well, regardless of the age, anybody can have excitement.
Right.
I mean, you have children, you have grandchildren, so by all means, I'm not directing this to you at all, whatsoever. This is the entire, I would like every board in Avon Park, everybody involved in Avon Park to have the same excitement and the same zest for the future. That's what we want, is everybody looking for the future.
Agreed. And, the selections for the board, one thing that was brought up is that there was nobody else to take the spot. And I have seen that, Sharon can attest, there's been plenty of times where, we're hunting and bleeding for people to fill a spot, and that person may not necessarily have the qualifications, we have to, with a good conscience, put somebody in there that we think is going to do the right thing. But we don't always have the, let's say, the pick of the lip. If there's 7 spots, we might have 7 applicants. Maybe we have 5. That's happened plenty of times. So I guess I would just ask the council, if there are a lot of applicants that are coming forward and that are applying, would we select them based upon their qualifications and not upon, not do their age, but do their qualifications and their zeal for wanting to see Avon Park grow?
I would urge you not to use age.
No. Why I specifically said not because of age. So what does the council say about that? Are we looking for the most qualified people to sit on these boards?
Karen,
Yes, ma'am.
we have many times tried to meet younger people to be on different boards.
Yes, ma'am.
They come, they stay for a couple meetings, they're not interested. So first of all, we've got to figure out something that's going to get the youth and excitement, as you call it, for the city of Avon Park. You can't put young people on a board and expect them to do something if they're not excited about the place that they live.
Sure.
So first, they have to be excited about the place that they live. And talk about the board. Most of the people on the board are coming to this board because they have been committed to do the job for the city. Not because they're old or not because they're young, but because they love the city that they live in and they want the city to grow. We don't sit up here on this board and act like we don't care. And if you want to see the board meeting full, find an issue that people don't like. The same thing in the city council. Bring an issue that people don't like. This whole thing will be filled all the way out the door. Seen it many times. But, I've only been on this board for about 8 months. Anytime if they can find a younger person to take my place, that would be great.
I think that, it's a misnomer. There was something brought up about the age, and that's really not my intention, is to even discuss the age. It's more of the zeal and the drive, is a person driven or not. You can be 30 years old and be the laziest person you've ever met in your life. You can be 85 years old and be the most driven person you've ever met in your life. So age is kind of irrelevant. I'm just looking for people who, as you say, love the city, want to see growth, are going to go out and proactively, approach this board. It's not a, lackadaisical thing. It's not trying to pull teeth, to get a quorum, So I just think that if those people come along, that we should be open to trying to fill those ranks with people that are going to be here and, that are going to want to build a career here and continue Avon Park on.
I know that I served on the planning and zoning board. I think that was the first board I had to set them in because Mayor Schuler asked me to be on it because of my engineering experience, and I really appreciated the offer as well. As we all know that most of the boards, not necessarily planning and zoning, has had a hard time keeping people to get a quorum to vote. And it looks like the planning and zoning board is doing really well with the people that are on the board that continue to come. My only question is, what idea do you think you guys would come up with? I think we now have 2 alternates. Do they participate in the meetings, or do you think there's a time or a frame that you maybe would have them take somebody's place permanently instead of sitting on as an alternate? Does anybody on the board have an idea with that?
Okay, do we not merge the variance committee and planning and zoning?
Do we mix
We used to
them?
have.
Yeah, Board of
variance
Adjustments,
meetings.
yes.
You merged them, okay. So then why didn't the board expand?
It can.
I mean, you can put as many people as the council lady would like to see on here.
Sure.
Personally, I think we have enough. I just thought maybe we should mix it up.
Well, then mix it up with some younger people. Bring them in.
It's
Expand the
interest.
board.
I think it sounds like we're having interest problem.
Yes, we are having
There's
an
no
interest
interest.
problem.
We have to get the
Young
interest.
people are not interested in serving on a board. But if you can find one that is interested, I absolutely think that they should be on the board.
Well, you can rest assured for the future of Big Bone Park, I will make it my mission to go out and find as many interested parties that are in the industry, that are pounding the pavement every day to grow business and build business, that are gonna wanna put in applications. So you guys be ready for applications to come in, though we don't have any open spots. I'm gonna put as many people as we can to fill out applications, and we'll see where we are in, a month or two. Any, Tom? Yes, sir.
Again, Tom Macklin, 609 County
Yes,
Road
sir.
64 East. For clarity, did the Planning and Zoning Board and the Zoning Board of Adjustments become a single board? And then, is that board in fact then a quasi-judicial board where their decision is not it's not a recommendation, but binding? Is that what's
Yes.
happened?
Is the city council the actual board of adjustments? No?
No, the planning and zoning board acts as the board of adjustments.
Okay, and that was Jeff Schmucker from Central Florida Regional Planning.
So they are on an autonomous board, they don't bring recommendations, they are now making the determinations.
When they sit as the zoning board of adjustment.
So they're still sitting
That's
as,
quasi-judicial.
in two functions, they're not, I mean, sometimes they convene as planning and zoning, other times they convene as zoning board of adjustments or variance, is that what I'm hearing?
Sure.
Yeah.
Jerry, perhaps you could give an example of what
I
one
think
would
the
be.
best person right out there in Central Florida Regional Planning Council, because he's actually second the board meetings.
Yeah, so it was several years ago that the two boards actually merged, and the actual board of adjustment as a separate body went away. Planning and zoning board now acts as that body. When there are items like a variance or anything that would require a quasi-judicial hearing, the planning and zoning board would act in that way. We used to open it up as two separate meetings. We would open it up as the board of adjustment, and we would close that, and then we would open up as planning and zoning board. Since the code was amended, it's the planning and zoning board acting as the board of adjustment where those types of actions require a quasi-judicial.
Well, they're not actually acting as a board of adjustment, then. What you're saying is that they're always the planning and zoning board, but they do quasi-judicial hearings when it's necessary.
That's right.
Okay. Tom, I'm assuming that answered your question?
It did, thank you.
Okay. Anything else on this issue?
I just want to thank everybody who serves on that board, especially the alternates, because I know that sometimes it's difficult to get involved, and like I said, if we get enough people to be on the board and have a quorum, this is one of the few boards I think we've always been able to do that, and I think that the planning and zoning board is probably the most important board we have in the city, actually. So I thank all of you who have served, and those that have experience or knowledge, I hope you stay.
Sure.
Mayor, can I add something?
Yes.
Mayor Schuler's name came up, but when she got, I'm going to say something good, Sharon. When she got on, it was, I'm sure the rest will agree, there was many times we met, we had no quorum, so we all showed up. Poor Jeff drove down, that's why he made me, or Chrissy check and see who's going to be here. But since she showed up, we've had a quorum, so I thank her for that. And I don't know, it's probably a Jerry question whether you can do it tonight, but we do have an individual who I had Chrissy look up, Elvin Dallas. That's the one he brought up here, but he hasn't been maybe to 2 all year. We can't get a hold of him. He doesn't return phone calls, so in my recommendation, he should be off.
Okay. Well, Jerry, do you see any issue with voting on that now, or should it be an actual agenda item at a future meeting?
There's no reason why you can't vote on it now.
Okay.
So, I'm sorry, how long has he been on, Mr. Schrader?
Well, he's been on for the 2 years I've been here, and I've probably seen him 2, maybe 3 times, and we can't even get a hold of him. He doesn't return Chrissy's telephone calls.
I can't leave messages either.
So
He can't even leave messages for
it would
him.
be my recommendation, I'm gonna actually go out and see the interest and see if there's some people to sign up to wanna be on this board. So I say, let it ride for another month, and let's see where we are in 30 days with applicants. And hopefully we can have some applicants to go ahead and be able to, put someone in a position, not just take someone out of a position. So that'd be my recommendation, is to put that off for a month. Is anyone opposed to that?
I'm good with that.
Okay. All right. Is there anything else on the City Council Planning and Zoning Board members' discussion? Seeing none, thank everybody that participated. We will move on. Item number 7, we have a first reading of ordinance number 01-2021 and 06-2022.
Yeah, for clarification, I think that was supposed to be 06-2022 and 07-2022.
Okay.
An ordinance amending the future land use map of the City of Avon Park, Florida, permitting 4 parcels of land comprising plus or minus 34.90 acres on property generally located to the east of a Miracle Avenue on the north side of East Winthrop Street and Avon Park from the future land use map of county medium density residential RM to city low density residential LDR. Transmitting the amendment to the Florida Department of Economic Opportunity for notification, provide for severability prior for effective date.
Okay. Jeff, why don't you tell us a little bit about this?
Well, we've got a kind of a brief presentation. It's probably a little longer than some that we've given recently, but just to go through this project with you. As the city attorney just read, that was the short title for the future land use amendment. There's actually 2 amendments that we'll be taking action on tonight. And this is a request as the presentation comes up. This is a request by Global Land Development, LLC. They're requesting a small-scale future land use map amendment, and that's for, we'll go to the second slide, Chrissy. Okay. The future land use map amendment is for 34.9 acres and a rezoning of 73.73 acres involving all 6 parcels that you see there. The 4 parcels for the future land use amendment are the 4 that you see on the east side of the property. As the city attorney mentioned, the property is located at the northeast corner of the intersection of A Miracle Avenue and East Winthrop Street. Again, the purpose of this request is to establish a residential subdivision to support new development of 250 single-family dwellings. Next slide. Future land use on the property today for the 4 parcels that are being amended is county residential medium, which supports up to 8 dwelling units per acre. Next slide. And the existing zoning on the full project area, the 4 parcels, is currently a county R1 residential district. And the 2 parcels to the west, which were previously in the city, nope, go back to that slide, is a city R1AA low density residential. Next slide. The proposed future land use again on the 4 parcels is for a city low density residential, which is consistent with the 2 parcels that were previously in the city, as well as the surrounding area. Now the colors look a little different there, but the area where these properties have come in and where this larger project is in a portion of the city that is transitioned into residential coming into the county, as well as the ag lands that are in this area. Those are all looking at this point to transition from ag into residential or low residential type uses. So in terms of consistency, it's consistent with the surrounding area. Next slide. The proposed companion rezoning would be a city planned unit development. And again, the proposal here is for the establishment of 250 single-family units. Next slide. So in terms of the compatibility, as I mentioned before, it's a transitioning area of the city into residential. The future land use of low density residential is consistent in this area, allowing up to 6 dwelling units per acre. Again, however, because of the PUD zoning, that's going to limit the total development on the property to 250 units. So the resulting density there is only 3.39 dwelling units per acre. So while the land use would allow up to 6, with the PUD limitation on the number of units, the total maximum density would be 3.39 dwelling units per acre. Next slide. With regard to consistency with the city's comp plan, in general, supports opportunities for additional affordable housing. The applicant's here tonight, I'm gonna invite him up in a moment, he can talk more to this, but I think the development intent here is to create market rate housing. This would be for your workforce, this would be for retirees in the community. So when we say additional affordable housing, just to be clear on the record, we're not talking about subsidized or low income housing, it's your workforce in the city, your police, your fire, your medical workers, those folks. It would also be developed in an area where there's public facilities and services. We've coordinated this with the city's utilities and public works folks. And then again, because this is a request for planning and development, it tackles parts of the city's comp plan that talk about utilization of innovative development districts in the city. So the PUD certainly targets those policies. Next slide. In terms of impacts on public facilities and services, just in summary, city water and sewer connectivity are available, as is solid waste collection services. With regard to transportation impacts, we did review a transportation impact study which found the current roadway system to be operating at your adopted level of service standards. They also ran a 10-year level of service review, and looking at if a proposed development were to build out, it would also, the surrounding roadway network would also be supported and operating at current level or operational level of service standards. Applicants coordinate with the Highlands County School Board in terms of concurrency with new students that might come online. In your package, there's a non-binding letter of concurrency in support of that. And then again, because we're talking about a PUD, open space and recreation, generally when we review that in terms of the development coming in or the impacts on the city's facilities, open space and recreation will actually be had on the property. So no additional impacts from that standpoint. Next slide. Real briefly, I'm going to go through just 2 slides in regards to PUDs. I think most of you have heard our presentations as we've come through and properties that have been zoned planned unit development, but as part of a planned unit development, that also requires a binding master development plan. And essentially what that is, it's the concept plan laying out what the concept layout development intensity is going to be on this property. So in general, what you're seeing on the screen here, it's a mix of 50-foot wide and 70-foot wide lots. What you see in the yellow along the southern boundary and the eastern boundary, those are the larger lots. Those are the 70-foot wide lots. There's 48. There's 48 of those, and they're approximately 8,400 square feet. What you see in the interior of the project and to the north and the west, that's 202 6,000 square foot lots. Those are the 50-foot wide lots. What you see in the green then, those are the areas of the open space and recreation. Also incorporates in stormwater and other facilities and services. In terms of infrastructure, it will include or is proposed to include an internal trail system which will connect to sidewalks on the outside of the development, which will then connect to other parts of the city. And as you all are aware, this property where it's located, we do have a school nearby, so connectivity to the school will also be a factor in creating some of that connectivity in this development. Overall, the city's development review committee has reviewed all of this, and the requirements of the city's plan unit development for the master development plan criteria has been met. Next slide. So again, with regard to PUDs, conditions of approval can be established or considered by the city, and I'll just go through these in summary. We've got 11 conditions that we're offering tonight for the city's consideration. In summary, number 1 is the development shall not exceed 250 dwelling units. Numbers 2 and 3 state that a boundary survey and improvement plans will be required at the time of subdivision planning. Number 4, an additional traffic impact analysis will be required at the time of planning. And the purpose of that is, once we get to that phase where we're actually talking about laying out the development here, if there's any additional changes or anything that has changed from this point in time to that point in time, in terms of improvement, if a turn lane or something needs to go in, we're going to review that in more detail. Next slide. Condition number 5 essentially states that a minimum 10-foot landscape buffer shall be established along the entire periphery of the development site. Number 6 establishes the primary structure building setback requirements. The applicant and staff have worked on, because these lots are a little bit smaller, the type of development that would come in the product they would like to build. Front setbacks of 15 feet, a rear setback of 20 feet, side setback of 5 feet, and then a corner street side yard of 15 feet, which essentially respects the front yard setback. So if you're a corner lot, you've got 2 front yard setbacks. Number 7, the minimum floor area for single-family dwelling would be required to be 1,200 square feet. Next slide. Number 8, with the reduced minimums in terms of the side yard and rear yard setbacks, a 5 feet rear yard and side yard setback requirement for accessory structures. To reduce what the code currently requires is 7.5 feet down to 5 feet. And we can talk about that more if there's any questions on that. Number 9, in general, conditions require that all development design standards are met at time of planning and development. Next slide. Number 10, issuance of driveway permits when you can coordinate with the appropriate entity at time of development. And then finally, number 11, a homeowners association shall be established at time of planning. And this is essentially to make sure that there is a legal entity that'll take care of all internal areas of the subdivision in terms of any common areas, facilities, stormwater, things of that nature. So with that, the recommendation for both the future land use change and the zoning change was a unanimous vote by planning and zoning board for approval. And with that, I'm going to ask Jonathan Sewell with Noble Land Development to come up, introduce himself. And if you all have any questions of him, more specifics on the project, or myself, or most areas, questions.
Very good, thank you. Jonathan, please give your name and address again. Name and company that you're associated with.
Jonathan Sewell, Noble Land Development, 115 West Pine Avenue in Longwood, Florida.
Yes, sir.
Thank you for your time tonight, and also thank the staff, planning council. They've been very helpful and responsive. Really busy times, so we have a lot of projects going on, and by far you guys are the most responsive as far as getting back to some emails.
We'd like to hear it.
Very helpful. We, about 2 years ago, started doing some work through Highlands County, Sebring. We're looking at projects down there. We found Avon Park to be a nice location. There's a market for workforce housing. Affordability is obviously a concern. We've done projects of this kind elsewhere. We have several both that are underway right now. Welcome any questions you have. We're looking to start construction following improvement plan approval, which I suspect will be last quarter of this year. We expect site permits to be met.
Are you going to have phases, or are you going to be building all at one time?
Built likely in phases.
How many phases are you planning on?
4. We're looking at the different scenarios with builders. There's a builder interested in all of it. There's also 3 builders interested in getting the third along those lines. So to answer your question, I think it's going to take 3 to 4 years for the total build out. And
So you need to reserve water and wastewater service. So you need an agreement.
developer agreement right over time.
When you say over time, not right away, or?
Well, we've established what the city would permit as far as reservations, and then take them down as per quarter or whatever the city's regulations.
Well, that would be your choice as far as, I can tell. If you want to break it down phases, that's fine, but whatever you don't pay for, obviously it's not reserved. If the city uses up all its capacity, then that next phase is going to be built until we get more capacity.
We certainly understand.
Okay. So I'd be interested in the sources of funding.
For the site improvements?
Yeah, for the actual build outs. I'm assuming that you're going to be building all these homes in chunks, there's 250, let's say 50 at a time or something like that, or are you just building per customer each time, or how's that going to work?
The site improvements will be funded internally.
Mm-hmm.
As far as the builders are concerned, I don't have much control over that.
So are you simply going to offer these lots to builders to say if you'd like to build a spec home, you can do that here?
Yeah, they're likely not to be one at a time. We're dealing with regionals nor nationals who establish schedules from a contracted takedown schedule of X number of lots per month or per quarter.
Okay. Are these intended to be rentals, or are they gonna be sold to individual families, or?
Fee simple sold.
Yes.
Are you planning any amenities like a clubhouse or pool or anything like that?
At this point, it's pavilion, barbecue areas, horseshoe, the trail system.
I'm just thinking in regards to additional water and sewer users.
Oh, okay.
Water, laundries, you know, like that, when you're looking at single family home buildings and you don't have enough laundry.
That's right.
But you're gonna have a clubhouse, which may need some, especially as a pool.
We don't anticipate having a clubhouse and pool. We expect to have builder interest to express that, and I guess when we get closer to our arrangements with them, we'll be ready to make those improvements on the common area.
Okay. All right, so is it possible that these would ever be HUD houses or subsidized houses?
No, sir.
Okay. And it'd be purely bank funded, self-funded, that sort of thing?
That's right.
That's
That's what we've done and don't plan on changing.
In today's market, do you have an intended price point that you guys are trying to fall within?
At this time, it's 230, 240 starting and upper threes.
Okay.
Maybe the high.
Do you think the 1,200 square feet is going to be more of a minimum?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, and that is just the flexibility of all the builders we're dealing with know the market probably better than I do here.
Mhm.
And consider that as a minimum, but they do better when the house is larger and.
Sure. Is this going to be a aesthetically continuative group, or is it going to be all different colors of homes? Is there a actual architectural plan for the color schemes and roof lines and things like that, or?
No, the three examples we provided are indicative of what we've had in the past.
Okay.
There'll be an HOA relating to the maintenance of common areas. Depending upon the builder, they're going to have their standards that get incorporated into the HOA documents also.
Okay.
So they want the first house not to be offending the last house.
Okay. So it looked to me like the actual company that's the applicant here, it hasn't been around all that long, but I'm sure you have a great deal of experience working through other companies. Was that company established just for this project, or?
No, we have 11 projects underway in various stages of either acquisition or permitting or development right now.
Okay. Could you give us possibly some addresses or titles of some other projects that you guys have worked on that were similar to this one?
Sure. There's two in the approval status right now, in approval process right now.
Are there any that are completed? Or in any stage of completeness?
They're industrial.
Okay.
And they're in Orange and Seminole counties.
Okay.
We don't have any in the Highlands. We have three in both.
So you primarily have done industrial in the past then?
Personally, no, I'm like 90% residential in from the middle of 1980.
I see. Okay, so you worked on large projects like this, or is this a small project for you, or?
This is, I'd say it's a medium size. The larger projects I've done are 15 to 1,800 units.
Okay.
It's a multi-year, sort of CDD or bonded. We're not looking to do that here.
Were those single family?
All single, it was actually single family and townhomes.
Okay. Do you have any addresses or names?
They're out of state, I can.
Sure.
Pass this on.
And just, if we can, Google and look them up, that sort of thing.
Sure.
So,
Provide those now, or?
if you don't mind, if you could just email city staff and they'll share it.
Sure.
So there's going to be, obviously 2 readings, so we've got a little bit of time in between those readings, so we can look at your past history and see, the other projects that you guys work on.
Fair enough.
Is there any other questions for him?
Yes. Sir, I need to make sure I'm understanding. You say that the prices can vary from 230 to about 340?
That's right.
Is that a 1,200 square feet living space or 750 living space?
That would
You
be,
told the mayor that it was 1,200 square feet. Is that a living
Yes,
space?
minimum.
1,200 square feet. Is that a
that's the
living-
minimum air conditioned space, that's right. Not
That would
including the
be-
garage,
Living space, 1,200 living space.
air conditioned space, that's right.
Okay. Okay.
They're all gonna be single-family homes, or townhomes, or condos?
No, all single family, fee simple.
And these pictures you provided, is that something that has been used with your company before, or? some of
These
the
are,
builders put-
some of the builders were approaching, or expressed interest, this is their architecture.
I like the looks of it, that's for sure. They look like they're bigger than 1,200 square feet to me. But, I like the idea that you plan on putting in. I think, Jeff, did you say that basically the development would be about half the usage of homes per acre that we normally would provide the maximum, and whether it's about practically half?
I'm not quite, if I can hear you.
So the land use will allow 6 dwelling units an acre.
And you're gonna put
So
it-
the 250 under the PUD would be 3.3 now.
So it's just a
It's
little bit over half?
Just one.
Okay. So they're gonna be bigger pieces of property, right?
Yeah, between a quarter and a third of
Yeah,
it.
I like that idea. That's what P and Z said they like too, so.
It's probably similar in size to parts of Sunlight, so,
Okay.
And I have a question on the minimum building setback. Correct me if I'm wrong, is it usually the rear 25 and not 20?
I've actually got the code here, I can pull it up, but I think most of the city's rear yard setbacks are 20 feet.
20. And what about the side? You had said
The
earlier
side-
7.5, but he's going
Yeah,
5.
the side, the smallest is typically 7.5.
Uh-huh.
Now, the front yard setbacks are usually a little bit deeper, which are about 25 feet. So this is 10 feet from that. But what you're getting with a development like this is you're getting homes up closer to the roadway, so it creates a different feel probably than what we see in traditional homes over the years. The lots, you have a mix of lots, 50-foot and 70-foot wide lots. So the density, if you will, is a little bit more dense. But overall, the overall density from an impact standpoint is, half of what you could develop in a low density residential. So to look at this, you'll have homes that are a little bit closer to each other with 5-foot setbacks. You'll have a 10-foot minimum between the two, between actual construction. But again, that's just a minimum. So the minimum would be 5 feet. That probably would be a little bit closer on the 50-foot wide lots. But the 70-foot wide lots, I'm not sure if anyone knows how they're gonna be developed, but 5 feet is the request to get those lots, to get that type of lots in here, still meeting all the requirements of the PUD.
Any other questions?
I like the idea. Well, the price of homes is going always, some cases, 100% in the last couple of years. So I know they seem a little pricey to me, but I'm not an expert in real estate, so I think that if we got builders to build it, and hopefully they got buyers to buy it.
That's their problem, not ours.
Right.
It's our opportunity.
That's right, yeah. I like that. Okay, is there any other questions for him? As I said, this is a first reading. These will go hand in hand. Is there anything else you'd like to add before we?
One last bit is about more or less the history of the company. Yes, it is young, new to incorporation, but I've been in the business myself personally, had my own company for 12 years, managing projects very similar, if not identical to the size and type. The parent company is Eden Site Development, also out of Longwood. They've been around for 20+ years, and I encourage you, they've been very active with single-family, multifamily, very complex projects, and they've done these throughout the Central Florida market.
Awesome.
And one last question, Mayor. Sir, you said these is for pretty much the retiree and workforce, right? Do your business usually build for subsidy home?
Yeah. Never had.
So is it the 0622 is what you read in the record? All right. Did you read them over just one? You read
You
those?
just read one.
All right. All right. So it'd be for ordinance number 06-2022, it's already been read into the record. Do we have a motion?
Make a motion to go ahead and approve, item number 7 for ordinance number 06-2022.
Okay, is there a second?
I second it.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Is there any further questions? Seeing none, we'll call the roll.
Councilmember McGuire?
Yes.
Councilmember McCure?
Yes.
Councilmember Taylor?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Bernard?
Yes.
Mayor Anderson?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Now we'll do an 07-2022.
It's an ordinance of the City of Avon Park amending the official zoning map of the City of Avon Park, Florida, specifically amending 6 parcels of land comprising plus or minus 73.73 acres on land generally located at the northeast corner of the intersection of Miracle Avenue and East Winthrop Street in Avon Park from the zoning of County R1 Residential District and City R1A low density residential to city DUD, planning unit development, provide for severability, provide for an effective date.
Do we have a motion?
I make a motion to approve ordinance number 07-2022.
Do we have a second?
I second it.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further questions? Seeing none, we'll call the roll.
Councilmember McGuire?
Yes.
Councilmember McCure?
Yes.
Councilmember Taylor?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Bernard?
Yes.
Mayor Anderson?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Sir, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you, Jeff.
Yeah, Jeff, thanks.
Yeah, let me just add one more question. Some of the questions that came up tonight, just so the public knows as well, if this gets approved at second reading, it will come back through the subdivision planning process. So a lot of the questions, Jerry, that you asked about the water agreements, just understanding everything that's gonna go into it, that'll all be hammered out at that subdivision planning phase, which will have to come back before you as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, item number 8, we have interlocal agreement between Highlands County and City of Avon Park for operation and maintenance of recreational facilities. Mark?
This is the agreement you signed for the last several years. The county is providing up to $110,000 for maintenance and operations, which we, in the budget, shows in our revenue, and then we show expenditure on it. And it's for maintenance and operation of all of our parks to help pay for it.
Is this the same amount that they normally agree to, or have they increased it at all?
It's the same amount as last year.
Trying to make my way down. All right, so we're not having to read anything into the record here. So I'll simply look for a motion to approve the interlocal agreement.
I'll make a motion to approve the interlocal agreement.
Do we have a second?
I second it.
We have a motion and a second. Are there any further questions? Seeing none, we'll call the roll.
Councilmember McGuire?
Yes.
Councilmember McCure?
Yes.
Councilmember Taylor?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Bernard?
Yes.
Mayor Anderson?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Item number 9, we have a lien reduction request for 1015 North Lake Avenue. Code Enforcement Supervisor, Mr. LaBelle. What do we got?
Hey, good evening. The lien reduction request was heard in front of Magistrate Sutherland on the 6th per our policy, or city ordinance. He did agree that we could go forward to tonight's meeting. I believe you all have a copy of his, which he did recommend something that was different than what policy states.
Yeah.
And I know Jerry probably was going to opine on that. But anyways, it's a lien reduction request for 1015 North Lake Avenue. The lien itself, $46,209.60, was derived from 2 separate case numbers, one being a blue tarp that was on the roof for an extensive amount of time. The other one was overgrown property. Both liens, as I said, their hard costs to the city were just the postage and handling. There was no abatement or anything. It was all running fines after both magistrate hearings. I believe Ms. Gomez is here, who is the daughter of the owner of the house. And I know she can provide a lot more insight on kind of the issues that were going on during time when this was cited back in 2020.
Before we hear from Ms. Gomez, you can make it for you. I just want to be clear on what is actually being requested. So I know that Mr. Sutherland had a opinion, and Jerry was about to speak. We could hammer that out.
I don't have the agenda because of the internet being down, but when I read this before, the problems I saw were, basically, the basic major problem was pretty much beyond your maximum amount of forgiveness. And that can't be done under your resolution, and I wouldn't recommend it anyway. And the other part was recommendation, basically to forgive the maximum amount for all categories, and when that doesn't make sense when one of the categories is efforts to comply, and didn't appear to be efforts to comply. During the period of time that this was racking up, there's actually a second violation, two violations overall, which flies in the face of effort to comply. That's all I have to say.
And that's why I think.
It's your decision. You're not bound by the recommendation. You use your own wisdom as to what you'd like to forgive.
Right, and that's why I believe Ms. Gomez is here to give the explanation of the noncompliance during that time.
Okay. So the recommendation by Mr. Sutherland was to
forgive it completely with the exception of the $300 deposit and the $25 application fee.
So $325 total.
That was his recommendation.
And Jerry, under your recommendation, do you know what the total would be?
No, I don't. I don't have a calculation for it.
90% is $4,120.
That's the lowest you could go would be $4,642.
No, $4,124.
Okay. Your policy says that you can only go to 90%.
Okay. All right, Ms. Gomez.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about why, whatever you'd like to share.
Okay, so my father was living in the home, and during that time he's elderly, very sick, dementia. So I did not know, he was physically not well either. I did not know about the fines being assessed. I was in the process of trying to get him into the hospital, trying to get him into a nursing home, and having him diagnosed with dementia. So we never received the notices that there were fines. They did actually come and blue tarp the roof. That was fine to him because he couldn't understand it. It's not going to work like this.
Was this after the last hurricane?
Yes, yes. And it stayed on there until it just dried up and fell away. But by that time, I had actually gotten him into a nursing home. Still not knowing until someone contacted me that the property was going to be sold because of taxes. And by the way, I'll take care of the lien that's on there. And I'm like, okay, what do you mean there's a lien on here? So that's when I contacted Randy and figured out everything.
Okay. So the ownership of the property, is it now in your name or?
Well, my father passed away last Monday.
Sorry to hear that.
So yes, it's now within.
Okay. So the code enforcement violations themselves, have they been remedied at this point?
Yes, I put a roof on as soon as I found out about them. My father didn't have money anyway. He just didn't. So I found out about the violations, and of course I had someone going to mow the grass now. And at the time it was not important to me because I was dealing with other things.
Sure.
The house was the last thing that I could, he wasn't receiving mail because he lost the key. It backed up for 10 days. They returned it to the post office. I got the post office to start doing it again. He ended up in the hospital. So it was just one thing after another that we never received notice. So once I, found out about fines and what they were for, then they told me the process, what I needed to do to get, I had to get it fixed, wait 90 days, and that's where we're at now.
All right. Randy, have anything else to add?
Just for the record, she is correct. Once she found out about the issue, she immediately contacted us. I did advise that it had to be in compliance for 90 straight days. It was, a new roof was put on, the grass continues to stay cut. The fine actually started on the overgrown part on 12/4 of 20, and then it was remedied on 1/19 of 21. So that one, again, that $4,642.30 was predominantly a $100 a day fine. Roughly 46 days equals that plus the postage and handling. The second one, again, was a tarp. That started 12/13/20 and ended at 11/29/21, which right around the time that Ms. Gomez, she contacted us. So it's on North Lake Avenue. It's right there by the Manors. It's one of those, like a quad, more than quad, I think, plex. Was readily apparent that something was going on there. The letters were sent to the property appraiser, the address on property appraiser's site per statute. Obviously, he wasn't getting them, and I think they actually shut his mailbox down and weren't accepting any letters at all. So I can see how, I personally can see how that they didn't get notice, even though we did it correctly. The circumstances prevented that.
So if I'm reading this correctly, Mr. Sutherland's opinion was basically to forgive it down to the base amount because of the documentation of the physical and/or mental disability.
That is correct, and Ms. Gomez did send that to me, two notes, but I was told basically that really wasn't good to put into your packet, which I agree with, but I do have copies of it from Dr. Pinzon if you did want to look at it.
Yeah.
But I know she also has copies as well. I just didn't want to put that out in front of everybody.
Nobody needs to go in that much.
Right, I agree.
Okay. All right. So questions? Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Gomez?
I have a question for Mr. Lavelle. So the blue tarp stayed on for about a year and a half?
Since Irma?
Yes, yeah, it was pretty bad. I mean, it tethered and it was torn and it was on there. When it was originally started, as I said, it was, I guess it would be October 13th of 20, and then it was taken off November 29th of 21, so a little bit over a year it was on.
Okay. And to you, Ms. Gomez, you live here in Avon Park?
I live in Sebring.
Sebring. And who was taking care of your father before you got involved?
Well, I've always been involved, but I was coming every day from Sebring to Avon Park, but I was trying to get him out of the home. The roof was leaking, I knew it. That was my main escape for trying to get him out of there. I was just short of calling, like some type of, someone to make him get out. Because he did not have the funds to fix any of it. After the last hurricane, they gave him, they tarped the roof for him. Like FEMA or somebody came by and tarped the roof for him, and they gave him $1,500. So, that $1,500 set in his bank account, you need $6,000 to do your roof. He didn't have the rest of it, so he was unable to get that roof done. So yes, it's set tarp, and he was perfectly fine with that, because I couldn't make him understand that this is not okay.
Okay. Any other questions?
I just wanted to tell you that I'm sorry for your loss. I've gone through one recently myself, and most everybody in the room probably had lost the one that close, so I did not know.
Any other questions or comments? Is there anyone in the audience who wants to speak on this? All right. Having said that, we have a recommendation of our magistrate. We have a recommendation of our city attorney. It's entirely up to us which we'd like to go with, or any shade thereof. So I would open it up to council for motions.
just bearing in mind that there is a minimum amount in your resolution.
Okay, so I guess I would ask the question, with the minimum amount, obviously there are no exceptions to that rule, right?
Not unless you make
That we've established.
a separate reading.
Right.
And you can always change your policy. I would recommend it with that.
Right. Anyone wish to make a motion?
That's a tough one. You know, I think we need to stick to our policy because that's the main reason why we got it. It's a little tough decision here.
Yeah, so if we want to break from what our policy is, I think that we have to have a good reason. You can't just arbitrarily do it. So, you know, a reason can be, if the council feels this way, that in cases of documented, you know, mental health disorder, something to that effect, then maybe there's an exception there. Obviously, that's not in place now, so that's problematic of just simply doing that. We need to be an established doctrine, something that we can stick to. You know, putting that out there for you.
I have a question. What do you plan on doing with the home? Are you keeping the home?
Yes, we're gonna keep it. It needs a lot of work, because now, you know, I've been stopping in and doing what I can there, but he was on hospice for quite a while, so I've been with him mainly, and, he was in Sebring at Palms. But the insides, it has to be all redone, just everything.
Sure. Okay. So, like I said, I think that we need to, whatever we do needs to be established in policy. So, if we want to change our policy, that's fine. Then you can put this on hold until we do, but whatever it is needs to be according to the policy, and we need to stick to it. So, if we want to put an exception in there for, you know, some type of mental disability or something that's ironclad, hopefully Jerry has an insight into what I just said there.
Well, no, I can draft something if you want. But I think, you know, if you're gonna change the policy, just bear in mind also that the other parties that are impacted by this are the neighbors that have to live with it for that period of time.
Yeah, I can think of 100 ways to argue a similar thing, you know, different points that could become a person. So,
I personally don't want to change the policy, but at the same time, as those who know me personally know that this is, I can't make the motion at this point.
okay. So I guess, does anyone care to make a motion? We have to make some type of a motion. You know, if we don't make any motion at all, then it's going to be denied, and it would be responsible to pay the full amount, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so at the very minimum, we need to at least follow our policy and reduce it to the 90%, I think.
Do they have a payment plan that they can do this with, Jerry?
Say again?
Do they have a payment plan that they can do this with? We don't have to.
There's nothing to prevent you from doing a payment plan. But, I just want to point out, under the way the resolution is right now, it would be the minimum amount plus costs.
It would be the minimum amount plus the $325 or something. So that would bring the total to $4,449.
Can I?
Anyone wish to?
I think there, I don't,
Yes, say that,
it's 46,209.60. I know on the actual, application, I think it was 41. Somebody missed the second lien, but it was on the magistrate's order. It was put in the record on the magistrate order, so.
Okay, so the total was 46,000.
209.60. That's the two liens combined.
209.60.
Yes, sir, 46,209.60. So 10% would be $4,629.06, something like that. Just off the top of my head.
Okay, and then that would be, you would have to add the
$325 to it, yes.
Okay. So under our current code, that is what we have. If we're not going to go with that, then we need to change our policy.
The portion under B1 that says if violators are hospitalized, we can add the additional $30 30 to 70%, we can't add that on top of the 90.
Jared?
It goes to a maximum up to 90%, and you can't go any further than 90, the way it stands right now.
I'm comfortable with moving forward with that. It does keep continuity with what we've established. So I think that if we make exceptions, no matter how much it's justified, it's just a slippery slope and it's going to continue because there's going to be the next person that comes along is going to have an equally sad story or debilitating story, and there's a lot of them that don't. There's a lot of them that do, and if we get an economy failure, then you're going to have a whole lot of them. So we need to be armed with something that is foolproof and that we are remaining constant with. Anyone wish to make a motion? Going once. If not, I will.
Can we make a motion to revisit this and let us think about this a little more?
Certainly make a motion to table it, sure.
Can I say something? Why we need to table it? Shouldn't we remain consistent with what we're doing, like the mayor said?
So she just asked, could we? And
Yeah.
I simply said that you can. You can make a motion to table it.
Motion to postpone.
Motion to postpone.
But you can make a motion the other way if you like.
I mean, I just think we should postpone it just for a little bit. Her dad just died, what, a week ago?
Yeah.
Give her some time to see where things are, deal with her death of her father.
So I guess my question to you is, so I understand the death of her father, and I am sorry for your loss. I just lost a brother in March, okay? So I know what a loss felt like. But if we're gonna come back to the table a month from now, 2 weeks from now, and make the same decision that we're gonna make today, what good is that gonna do for her? Just to show that we show some type of sympathy?
So I would agree that a postponement, just for the sake of a postponement, doesn't really do anyone any good. If there's a postponement because you're going to seek to alter the policy in some way, then yes, absolutely, postponement is fine. But if it's postponing just for the sake of postponing, I don't think that would be a good idea. So again, I'll ask, is there a motion? Motion, anyone? Okay. Seeing none, I'll make a motion that we reduce it to 90%, which would be a total of $4,945, if my math is correct, and 96 cents.
I'm sorry, I didn't do the 90% because I.
So pending the staff review to make sure that those figures are correct, that we reduce to 90%.
I'll tell you real quick I just didn't have my funds.
Yeah, 90%, $4,124. That's not the $325.
Yeah, so the actual total is $4,945.96.
There you
go. That's the motion, but there hasn't been a second. So if there's no second, then the motion dies. So is there a second?
I second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Questions? Comments? Seeing none, we'll call the roll.
Councilmember McGuire?
Yes.
Councilmember McCure?
No.
Councilmember Taylor?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Bernard?
Sorry. Yes.
Mayor Anderson?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Gomez, we sympathize with you. I appreciate it. I appreciate your effort you have to restore that house.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay. Staff updates or administrations or anything?
How about the other code?
Seeing none, we have attorney updates. Code enforcement issue 803 North Delaney.
Yes, I've been having conversations with the code enforcement director and about this particular location that's listed in your agenda as being a pretty horrendous circumstance, and basically ignoring any efforts to have them comply with their code. And I was asked the question as to whether there's some other process that we can use in order to get compliance. And my response was that you can get an injunction enforceable through the court, by the court can then find somebody that fails to comply with his injunction or her injunction to be sanctioned, then up to being put in jail. You know, that could be financial, or it can be even up to the point of being put in jail. So, but I told them that I could not do that. That would have to be the decision that you would have to make, because I have no independent authority to start cases.
Can I give you an overview on this?
Please.
Okay. Well, this has been an issue ever since I started code enforcement in May of 2020. I did a little bit of background on the location. First of all, from a sheriff's office perspective, 2021 resulted in 14 calls for service to this location from an array of offenses for traffic-related, theft-related, civil-related, 9/11 hang-ups, burglaries, suspicious persons, suspicious incidents, and assist other agencies. Fast forward to 2022, from the 31st of January to date, 10 calls for service to this location. Definitely an increase when you consider 2021 was an entire year. Such calls for service included warrants, arrest warrants, theft, fraud, animal issues, 2 pit bulls, drugs, and domestic violence cases. I can tell you I go by this house numerous times a day. I can tell you that from my prior law enforcement position of running a drug unit for the majority of my career, I see about every meth addict that I've ever dealt with from the sheriff's office still there today. In and out, coming in and out of the residence. I've contacted the sheriff's office. I can tell you also by looking at some of the research, and just for the record, he is in here, he did show up, the owner of the property. From a lot of the research, I realized that the taxes, actually this house belongs to the subject that is causing the majority of the problems. It belonged to his deceased grandparents. His grandmother died on August 25th of 19. She was preceded by her husband. Okay, so I started looking at the taxes, and they're only paying like a couple $100 a year on property taxes. And I'm like, well, how can that be? So through some research, found out that still been getting homestead exemption on the location since the death. And actually talked to the county this morning. They actually did file some tax liens. After reviewing the information, they took action and now added tax liens to the property. We get numerous calls for service here. It's pretty much the worst of the worst. And I frankly am tired dealing with it, and I pretty much can speak for the neighbors that they're tired of dealing with it. And we've currently exhausted our reach. There's currently a running fine, approximately a little over $51,000 to date for junk-like conditions. Of course, that doesn't clean anything up. It's a running fine, which probably the city will never see any of that money. And so we have to go to something else, whether if it's eligible for foreclosure, which obviously is a jury question, or in this case, possible injunction, but we ran out of bullets for this one, so we need help. And for the people, and I believe he's here, and I'm sure he wants to speak, but I believe some other neighbors are also in here that have to deal with this on a daily basis, whether they want to come forward or not, that's on them.
Okay. I see the gentleman with the hand up. If you'll come up to the podium, state your name and address. And while he's coming up, Jerry, you mentioned a couple of options. So it's possible for us to seek an attorney to go and get an injunction.
Yes.
At that point, what would that injunction do for the city?
And the injunction will be an order by the court that you shall comply with the city's code within a time certain. And then if he fails to do so, then at that point he can be held in contempt. At some point, the contempt can be criminal contempt for failure to comply with court order.
Okay. So what would we have to do? Will we put an RFP for an attorney, or?
No, I think it can be handled by my office.
Okay. Okay. And what does something like that typically cost?
I don't know, since I was doing it myself.
Okay.
Stopped litigating about 10 years ago.
Do you have any idea to the length of that process?
It can take some time, but it'll get done. And like I I said, we haven't even talked to, the trial attorney yet, but, you know, I need your go-ahead before I start that process.
I understand.
And I can update you and let you know if we're gonna go forward with that, or if we have another alternative.
Okay. Yes, sir. Your name and address for the record, please.
Danny Bass, 803 North Delaney Avenue.
Yes, sir.
Um,
You're the owner of this property?
Well, it's in my mama's name.
Okay.
Now, I think. But this is ridiculous. Randy came by and talked to me a couple of weeks ago, and since then, I've been in and out of the hospital for last year. I've done hauled trailer loads, I admitted, stuff got accumulated up. I've done hauled trailer load of stuff off, and I got the trailer up there now, loaded it again. But it ain't like I ain't complying, because I definitely don't want no problem. I was born and raised here, been all my life, in that one particular place since I was 12. I got no problem cleaning the place up, and I've been working on it. For him to say that I ain't complied, I've been complying as hard as I can go.
Sir, how long have you stayed there?
Since I was 12 years old.
So you stayed there that long. Why did it fall into this condition
It
that
ain't
we
as
see?
bad as he's making out like it is.
Well, sir, we have pictures here.
Yeah.
The picture's pretty horrendous.
Yeah.
Well, I like to see those pictures.
I got a question, Mr. LaBelle. How recent is the pictures?
About 2 days, 3
About 2
days
days
old.
ago.
Yeah.
Okay. Cause I went by the property today. And this right here is, I guess what I'm trying to say is, I guess our trash truck came by or something, but what we see here is not there today.
Right.
And that was around about 1, 2 o'clock. So that's why I wanted to know how recent the pictures were.
Very.
But to be honest, some of the pictures do look good accuracy. But
Yeah, I just gotta go out of hand right now, you know, I'm just now getting, I was in and out of the hospital for last year.
Okay. So I guess I would tell you that, you know, anyone that's going through the code enforcement process, at any time, they can clean their property up. So whenever the property is clean and it's presentable, you know, you can call code enforcement and they'll come back out and examine to see.
I've been
has
here
it.
before, I've done just that, yes, sir.
Right. So you know exactly how it works then?
Yes, sir.
Right.
I've been working, like I say, I had a trailer for it, so I got hauled it off, and I got it backed up there again, and starting to load it again, and I had to take care of it.
Well, Randy admitted the fact that when he did remove some stuff, then he brought more stuff in.
Yeah, it's constant. There's a bunch of, yeah, well, I think person McGuire, or I'm sorry, McCure could probably speak on behalf of the situation of it. What you saw, you depicted over there on the bulk that you said that was, you recently took. That's where they put the bulk, well, they shouldn't be putting the bulk, but that's where they put the bulk waste. Half the time that stuff sits out there for a couple weeks. It continually gets added to, at one point, there was probably a 12-foot in circumference wire spool or a wooden spool out there. I mean, it's stuff that comes in and out. It's typical narcotics use, scrapping, where you just go grab dumpster dive, grab stuff, bring it to the house. Let's see what we can scrap. Let's see what we have to throw away. It's a theft of services from the city. All that stuff's not coming from that house. It's coming from somewhere else.
Sure. Sir,
I had a park in the back of my house, across the street, I never put that out there. It came out of the park.
It's always that.
Yeah, irrelevant. There's plenty of things that we could say that's a problem here. So what I would simply advise you to do is to clean your property. Now, the city's gonna do whatever we feel is necessary, that we have to bring this property into compliance. But during that process, you're more than welcome to clean up anything you wish. So our expert, Randy, is telling us that we need something else, that we need to go further. So the council now has the choice to consider going for an injunction. While we're pursuing that, the gentleman can clean up his property. There's no issue there.
Talking about that next week, but it would.
Sir, you'll have to refrain.
And so I can just update you at the next meeting as to what the trial attorney recommends with regard to this. And then, you know, you can tell me to go ahead and file the documents or not file the documents at that point. Okay. There's some additional time to get cleaned up, which he's had an amount of additional time already, but that will give him additional time, once again, to get that done so that the neighbors don't have to suffer from this.
Okay, so Randy, obviously this will be considered in 2 weeks for the actual injunction, after we hear back from his office's attorney. So I would just ask you that the day of or the day before the meeting, if you would
Oh.
the status again, as I'm sure you will.
I'm pretty sure I will.
So I got permission to go ahead and proceed with
Is
it.
anyone opposed to him proceeding? No, I think we're all in favor. Sir, do you have another comment?
No, but, for him to say about drugs.
Yeah, sir, it's.
I know, that's terrible. I don't know anything about drugs.
All right.
I know it's not, it's not.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Ma'am, we have,
Mayor, I have a question.
there's two of the neighbors that I think would like to speak on.
Bernice, is the question for him, or is it just a comment? Okay. Sir, if you would please sit down. You're done, yep.
So you said proceed with injunction,
So,
and
his,
if, go ahead.
yeah, his office, the attorney in his office is going to provide us an outlook, and a rough cost, I guess, of what that process would be, that we'll consider at our next meeting. So we're basically, he's getting 2 weeks to try to clean something up before we consider this at our next meeting.
So if he cleans it up,
He won't clean it up. I guarantee you. he
I'm
won't.
I'm
He's not gonna,
There seems-
it's been like that for 2 years.
Right. Yeah, so we'll have to, can't comment from
So I
the
just want to
audience.
know going forward, if we do clean it.
Yeah, if it was perfect and in compliance, then I'm sure this would go away.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
I think that's very reasonable.
Yeah, reasonable.
Ma'am, your name and address, please.
My name is Pamela Roden, and I live at 805 North Delaney Avenue.
Okay?
Okay? We've been there for 6 years now. Okay? We are good neighbors. We have fed this man. We have let him plug into our house when he had no electric.
Okay.
My husband has offered to help clean up his yard. This is why, when we bought the house, the realtor took us down Kendall Avenue and, and took us around the other way, so that we didn't see what was on the other side of the house. This is why I got a good deal on this house. Look, I don't, this stuff, it's definitely drug related. Can I tell you about the needles that we took to the police department that my husband almost stepped on in our own backyard? Okay? The day the pig got loose. They had a pig.
Okay.
It's the people that live there that are bringing all this crap that he lives, and when he said something about he had no idea about drugs, lie. Okay? But the stuff, it stinks. I'm afraid of rats. We have every feral cat in the neighborhood living over there because I'm sure of what is rats at this point. He's still talking.
Right.
Yeah.
So obviously, the point is taken that the property is a problem and we need to make every effort to get it cleaned up, which is exactly what we're doing. So.
Okay, and I so appreciate that, I do, and Shelley, thank you. And, you haven't been there as long as I have, but it's not gonna get any better.
Sure.
And that's why he's left, because he doesn't wanna hear it.
Sure. Well, we thank you very much for your comment. Thank you.
Sorry.
Anyone else on this issue? Seeing none, there's no further action to take at the moment. So we will move on to the city manager's report.
I don't know if I can follow the bell on that one, but. FAM, can say it with a smile because we got our agreement thanks to you, but just talk about the transition that took place. City staff and FAM troops are working together last week, getting a lot done out there. Actually, Rick and David Roberts volunteered to go out during the day and help them get the whole place mowed. I told them the first time we'll help them out until they get the full, and we'll continue to help them. But everything's mowed out there. They've met with a lot of people. I don't think it could go any better. So we're working well with them, and just want to let you know the transition's going well. I think today's the first day I haven't heard from JT or Casey. So
are they actually taking over complete management of the airport then?
yeah, still with little questions of us, but yeah. I mean, Danielle was out there couple days. I went out and met with them 2 or 3 times, stopped out after work, make sure everything was going good, and heck, we found out they didn't even have hot water. Who knows how long that hasn't worked out there, but like I say, these guys are jam-up professionals. You brought on some really good guys doing great jobs. They're out here in the state, out of the state, looking to get people in here, so I would say everything is going really good with them.
Good. So the agreement is signed and.
The agreement is signed, we've had to have them tweak the insurance. Jerry got me, and I've got with our broker, and he's looking actually the pollution, he wants to read the policy. I sent one to Jerry, because Jerry had a couple good catches on it, and I sent it to him, he'll look at it. I sent that to our broker to look at again, but yeah, it's signed, the mayor signed it, they signed it. I have on my desk 1,061 pages to hand off to them. That's with all there's 1,010 pages of just exhibits, so they get a whole copy, plus we emailed it to them, so yeah. We didn't put those in your packets.
Let's go over that line by line.
That's what I was scared of. The AIP due diligence grant, that's the one we're putting in for. Melody, did it end up, what, 600 or 500,000? Went down a little bit when we got a memo from FAA on what should be in there or not. The mayor signed off on that. That was emailed to the manager in Orlando, so he has that, and they wanted the agreement to look at. We don't know what's going to come from that, but they got it. Outside counsel knows they have it. He said he'll be talking to them if they got any questions. So all that is moving forward.
I see Bird Scooters here.
Bird Scooters, she did send the attachment. We got a little excited, didn't send it on the first one, but it gives you some numbers on how many actual rides there are. And actually, we're trying to get on their portal where we can pull up any kind of stats that we want. So.
Okay. We have a couple sign-ups. I'm assuming it's about Bird Scooters. Nope. About micro-mobility. Okay. Oh. Citizen participation. So, Mark, are you done with your...
Yeah, I'm done. I just wanted you to see how many actual rides are taking place.
Okay. Any questions on the Bird Scooters?
Are they happy with everything so far?
Is who? The citizens here or me?
No, the company's doing it.
Oh, yeah, the company, as I just spoke to them the other day when I was getting these stats from them, and they're hooking us up on the portal so we can pull them up. But yeah, they're fine. The local, we deal with the local bicycle shop. I've called them probably since you entered into the agreement half dozen times. Usually it's because some of us have seen them operating on the other side of 27. Takes a while to get that geofencing down, but I haven't heard a complaint on that in the last couple of months. I've only had to call them on a couple little things on where they were on the sidewalk or that, and they respond right out, and no problem with it.
Okay, sent that ordinance or the contract to Plant City. I spoke with the Plant City attorney about that and sent him the ordinance as well.
Yeah, I was telling Jerry, I got the assistant city manager at Plant City got me and we did a Zoom call. He wanted to talk about it because Bert has approached them. It's the second city that I've sent what Jerry authored on the agreement and also the ordinance. And both of them were very happy that they got it and that you paid for Jerry to do it. But
yeah. Very good.
Mark, did they say why the numbers went down? From December, January to like March, April?
They said that wherever they start, there's always going to be high numbers because everybody says, hey, I want to try this out, and then some of them want to keep riding them, and others say, I've ridden it, I don't want to ride it anymore. But they said that they told me when it started, you'll see high numbers when it starts, and it'll go down.
So it's going pretty much.
Sure.
I think once the summertime gets here too, and the kids are out of school and it may go back up.
There is no one below the age of 18 riding these scooters. You know this.
I have the kids in college.
Okay.
Well, maybe if we get more events like last weekend and this coming weekend over at the park, and we'll get people on it, and like the mayor said, we get some businesses down here where you can actually ride down and get a sandwich or a cup of coffee or whatever.
And what you see is the amount of rides versus the unique users.
Right.
It looks like the same people are basically using it, 3, 4, 5 times. Just
Yep.
the average. Anything else in the city manager's report?
That's it.
I have a question about those birds. Have they said anything about any of them being damaged? I'm curious about that.
Stolen.
Yeah, stolen, damaged.
They have not reported one stolen, and they haven't said anything about damage. They maybe said minor damage they haven't told me about, but no. And code enforcement, if they've had any calls, I don't know about. I haven't heard any.
No.
Okay. All right. Mr. Hall, what can we do for you?
Let's see.
George Hall, 118 North Verona for the record. Thank you for allowing me to endure your meeting and see you at the end. I just want to make you aware, and my request tonight is that maybe if you have compassion on my situation, that you would direct city staff to investigate just a little bit more. We have moved our office from where we've been for 23 years to what used to be Dan Ever State Farm Insurance Agency building, and we remodeled that building. We've moved there, and we're in the process of changing our address.
Yes.
And that has been a nightmare because the post office has requested and is requiring that we put a mailbox up. And just because of my past sitting where you sit, I don't believe that that goes along with our CRA or our local development codes for downtown, because maybe you don't know where I'm going, but there's nowhere to put a mailbox in front of the building that I purchased without busting up city right-of-way, pavers, or something else. And the response that I got from the post office was that in the future, anyone who comes in updating their address is going to be required to put a mailbox up. And that is all the way through the downtown corridor. Spoke with several other businesses who have been requested to do the same thing in downtown. And I just want y'all to sort of envision, Auto Options has changed hands. They've been required to do this. DevTech, they went as far as to change their address so that they didn't have to do this. But I mean, we're talking, I drove it today, we're looking at 150 plus mailboxes on Main Street. You've got parallel parking. The only openings you have are driveways going into businesses. So you're either going to end up with 4 or 5 mailboxes on every corner for your city dump truck to run over every time they turn the corner. So I'm just giving you this to let you know.
Sounds like a mid-level manager reading a rule and misapplying it.
Well, I boast to be a pretty good smoozer, and I have gotten nowhere. So I'm looking for some assistance from y'all if you agree that this is something that you don't want.
Did they tell you that you had to put it by the street, or did they say you just had to have a mailbox in front, meaning like right in front where the sidewalk starts to go around?
Well, they told me that it had to be in the right of way so that a truck could pull up to it.
Oh.
And
Did you say, well, listen here, Slick, what if I want to have an apartment building?
well, I mean, over here at the apartment building, they required us to put in a multi-unit mailbox where corner, right over here at the corner of Verona and Pleasant Street. They required Verona Villas to put in the large distribution box
Out
at
by the
our own
road.
expense. So, yeah.
Okay. So I guess the question will come down to is, what authority do we have to force them to allow on-building mail slots and things of that nature?
Zero authority, but somebody could try and speak to somebody else to higher up than what he's spoken to. You might get a little further. Because we don't have, I mean, obviously the privacy laws, say the federal government, obviously that's, it's to say before we get to say, or even before the county gets to say, or even before the state gets to say. So we're down, way down the list, but maybe you can find something more reasonable in the postal system.
I volunteer to speak to the postmaster, take a trip to the gun range and see what we can get done. I think they might get the picture. We can talk to them. You know, I had a similar issue with my building, and through talking to them, you know, basically it was eventually agreed upon. And this was, you know, several years ago. So I don't know if something new has happened in the past few years, but as long as we had a clear path for them to have a mail slot on the building, that was fine. Something that they could drive up to. It doesn't necessarily have to be, you know, drive by like a, you know, McDonald's or something, but just as long as they could pull up to the building, have a spot to go, and get out, drop the mail. They were fine with that. So I'll talk to them again and see if that is in fact the case, and if not, then perhaps we'll see if we can go above that head, and if not, then we'll put a petition together and see if we can go above that.
Yeah, I remember even a few years ago when they first started making residents put mailboxes out, And I knew some neighbors that were basically handicapped, and they said it was, you know, extremely difficult for them to get out and actually go to the street every day and come back. And they turned around, and at that time, they allowed them to put a mailbox by their parking wall or something, so they could just open the door and grab it. So to me, it's just kind of a little ridiculous. I think, like you said, it seems like somebody thinks he's got a little more power than he does, but I think that this council will support you with that issue, not only for you, but for the rest of the business, future business in the city.
I know that y'all just entered the deal with the Brickell building. I mean, are they gonna put 14 mailboxes out in front? And I'm sure they're gonna be jackhammering holes in your contract.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense.
Right. Yeah, no, absolutely.
Thank you.
And I apologize too, George. I should have asked you to come up first before we started the meeting.
All right, we have one more sign up. Mr. Tom Macklin, Micro Mobility.
Tom Macklin, 609 County Road 64 East, here in Avon Park, and I did not know that that was going to be a part of your report. I had the opportunity, as a couple of you will remember, last fall when you were first entertaining this ordinance, and I know that at least 3 of you on the council this evening are a little bit of a disadvantage in as much as you may not have been part of the discussion. Certainly you were a part of the votes where this ordinance 15-2021 was adopted, and it basically has to do with the micro mobility devices.
Did you try again?
Yes,
I own a micro mobility device, electric bike.
Okay.
And with increased fuel prices here as of late, I've started doing a little bit more of my rat killing down around town with my bike for obvious reasons. It's cheaper for me to do that than it is to start the truck, and it certainly doesn't hurt me any to be on the bike. But as I had the occasion to get a copy of the ordinance, because I have not seen it yet, and I want to thank both Mr. Lavelle and your city clerk here, because I went down the last part of the last week. They were very responsive and set me up with a copy of it very quickly. And I came this evening for some clarity on this thing. Some of you will remember, and Ms. Gray, you were a party to the conversation back then because you were still on council. I had concerns about having an ordinance that would address both privately owned micro mobility devices, and that's the electric scooters or electric bicycles, that addressed both the rentals and private owned and used by citizenry. So some of this ordinance, and it's interesting that I heard this evening in the report there that this has been forwarded off to several other municipalities, because as I shared with Mr. Lavelle today, and he agreed with me, there's some very ambiguous language in this ordinance that doesn't provide clear guidance as to whether or not you're dealing with only rentals through the program, or whether or not it applies to privately owned and operated units as well. And so, first off, and maybe the answer, or the question I need to ask is, was the intent for this ordinance to only address those bicycles, scooters, and e-bikes that are addressed by or through the rental process? Or is it intended to also apply to privately owned units?
Well, I don't have the advantage of having it here in front of me, but my recollection was it was not originally intended to cover those areas, but there were some areas that we had to cover in regard to safety and security that we picked up and just spoke to those particular areas, as I recall. But it wasn't the whole thing, obviously, because a lot of it has to do with rentals and where they place them and the parking areas. I mean, Tom, you could have called me and asked me about this, and I would be happy to talk to you about it. And if you've got an issue with it, I'd be happy to make changes. But when I said when I presented it, this is a whole new area, right, and I'm trying to plow that area as best I can and we may have to change it. So, I mean, I'd be happy to hear input from anybody. I said the same thing to Plant City's attorney, and he said, you know, he liked it, you know, so I can see, but, you know, obviously, yeah, like any other attorney, he's probably gonna make changes that he likes.
Sure. Well, and to that end, I apologize. I was out of state for several months last fall, so I was not able to be here when you went through the first and second reading and the adoption, or I would have, you know, at that point in time, you know, addressed some of these concerns, and I only just now recently picked it up. And as I came to the code of compliance today, you know, based on a couple of the questions, because I was looking for clarity from the enforcement officer, and he suggested, you know, I really think, you know, if you come to the meeting tonight, you might ask. And so that's why I'm here.
So what is the concern? Is the concern that we are governing private use, or where is this going?
There is, if the intent was only rentals, and okay, a lot of the definitions aren't necessarily, one definition isn't consistent in as much as, or it doesn't read like I think it says user, an individual who uses a micro mobility device.
Okay.
That can be anybody. But in the title, it references private users. And then there is a spot in here where it talks about people that would be private use by reservation through an online application. I can see where that would be for rental only as far as private use. But when it goes through definitions, it doesn't reference private use, and in the explanation, it doesn't say that it's for rentals only. It's just in very general terms, anybody who uses one. But more specifically, on page 5 of 14, and I will get this to staff now that I know that the intent was not to regulate privately owned and used units. But on page 5 of 14 in paren 12, it says private owners of micromobility devices without geofencing must make themselves aware of this article and the boundaries of the geofencing areas and strictly adhere to those limitations, which basically says anyone who privately owns a micromobility device is regulated to only operate those in the areas that have been established by the city manager as the areas that you can operate in. So there's some things in there that were kind of up and down, you know, but that's the clarity I was looking for. The intent was not to regulate those that we as private individuals own. This was just rentals.
Right, and the reason why is because a micromobility actually includes bicycles, doesn't it?
It does.
Yeah, so.
Yes. Bicycles, scooters,
whether powered or not.
e-bikes, yeah, motorized bicycles and so on and so forth. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, well.
Clearly not the intent.
Okay, well, I will kind of go through one of these and maybe get another clean copy and highlight some of the things that raised red flags for me.
Nobody's gonna stop you from riding your scooter.
I don't have a scooter. I wouldn't do it. I don't do it all the time either, but I do have a question, if I may ask one more.
Sure.
About the parking corrals, as they are designated in here.
That's strictly for the rental people.
I understand this, but are there specific parking corrals that have been designated as outlined in the ordinance by the city manager, that they may only set them up in groups of 4, 5, 7, 8 here or there? Because it appears that the operator just willy-nilly takes them out and sets them wherever they want. In fact, I would go so far as to say that they're trying to cater, and it was a little bit of a joke, cater to the clientele that is not 18 years old.
Are you referring to the bunch that sits right outside the high school?
They just placed last week 9 of them within 100 foot of the high school.
I'm not commenting on that, but I will simply say that that is predominantly how it's done. And I've used it in several cities, large cities like Nashville, Chicago, places like that. And the way it's done, in fact, it's called jump and dump.
You get on it, you write it to where you wanna go, and you leave it there.
Oh, no, I'm not talking about the drop-off. What I'm talking about is where the operator stages groups of them.
Right.
So that's what's designated as a.
That's the sort of thing that can be policed by the city manager, he can say, you know,
Yeah.
you need to stop doing that there, or whatever, if that becomes a problem.
Yeah,
Really,
it just appears to me that they're catering to a clientele that doesn't meet the criteria, or at least the intent of the ordinance, and that's under 18 as opposed to over.
I never gave my kids a credit card, so I never had that problem.
We got 8 and 9-year-olds with smartphones. Thank you. I
Anything-
understand.
All right, anything else? Seeing none, entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn, please.
Seeing no opposition, we are adjourned.